Welcome to the Benji channel. My name is Benji, and we might very well be discussing one of the best One Piece chapters in all of the series. And this isn't even an exaggeration. The levels of depth and discovery in this chapter are unlike anything that we have seen in a very long time. But most importantly, Luffy's dad, Monkey D. Dragon, gets more fleshed out in this chapter, and it has been a long time coming. And I'm letting you guys know this right now. If you haven't already put some stocks into Dragon, go ahead and do that right now. To be honest, this chapter was all about Dragon Peace. But go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to the Benji channel. I make weekly One Piece content, and I will soon be making more anime and manga content on other subjects within the anime and manga genre. But as well, go ahead and subscribe to the Geek Giant podcast channel, and if you want to go ahead and discuss with me and any of our little debates that we have, go ahead and join the Geek Giant Discord. But this chapter review might be a long one, but just hold on, because I think that a lot of the information that we got in this chapter is going to be well worth it. So let's go ahead and start with chapter 1066 of One Piece, The Will of Ohara. So to begin, we start with another cover page detailing the events that were happening in Whole Cake Island. But right now, we are actually back in Germa, and I'm pretty sure from what we know that Caesar Clown is going to have some discussions with his old business partner, Judge. And this is all hindering on the fact that Caesar Clown probably was involved in some of the MAD's programs, scientific discovery. So I'm not 100% sure, but I do believe that Caesar Clown was a part of the MAD's organization. But I really do feel like there's a reason that Oda is really trying to indulge us in a lot of the stuff that's happening between Germa, Whole Cake Island, as well as Caesar Clown kind of being in the fray. I think that a lot of the scientific stuff that we're going to get, especially in this arc in particular, especially for Sanji and Frankie, is going to be very indulgent. But let's go ahead and begin the actual chapter. So we start with Frankie from last chapter asking, what does Vegapunk mean when he means that this is the technology of the past? Frankie says in confusion, this futuristic city existed? And Vegapunk simply explains that this is just a theory. He continues and says, on the world of archaeologists, there was once a man who risked his life to find that kingdom. So he goes on, then he found a machine in a certain place that had manufacturing date which matched the theory he had in his mind. Robin then asks a question that I'm pretty sure a lot of the audience was asking themselves: was this machine produced during the Void Century? Shaka Vegapunk number 1 is actually pretty perplexed by this question and actually asks Robin how does she know about this. Nami then questions Robin as well. But Vegapunk says more about what he actually knows and tells Robin that he only knows of her birthplace and also knows the painful story of the Ohara incident, and says, I think the reason it got destroyed was because Ohara knew about the existence of that kingdom. During the Void Century, there was once a highly advanced civilization that existed. The history about the battle between a certain kingdom and 20 families. He goes on to say, the winners were the 20 families that founded the world government that we know of today. To make sure that nobody carried that kingdom's ideology, they erased its existence from history. Now this was absolutely major because if I'm not mistaken, I believe this is the first time that anyone is talking about this war that happened between the 20 families as well as this ancient civilization or the ancient kingdom. And I believe it hasn't been touched on since we actually got Robin's backstory in Ohara. Now, I could be wrong, but just let me know in the comments. But not only that, once again, Doflamingo's speech in Marineford just takes this statement to a whole nother level. Justice will prevail, but of course it will. Whoever wins this war becomes justice. God, I miss Dofi. Dofi is that man. But this speech rings heavily anytime I hear about this war or conflict that happened between the 20 families as well as the ancient kingdom. But not only that, I believe this chapter alone almost confirms that the ancient kingdom and the 20 families was a very significant battle. But I believe that the ancient kingdom that Vegapunk is actually describing to us in this chapter was actually the home of the D clan members. And their descendants are carrying on the same passing of will as we saw in Ohara, or what we'll see in this chapter. And this is probably what it truly meant to have a great cleansing, detailed by the Gorosei in previous chapters. Cutting back to the chapter, the entirety of Sanji's group is in shock, except Frankie, who seems oddly fascinated by the prospect of this being a Romance Dawn situation. But Sanji asks, wait a minute, Vegapunk, then those people who knew about it, Vegapunk cuts him off and says, yes, they've been obliterated. Sanji questions how he can speak about this so easily. Nami and Usopp are deeply troubled as well. But Vegapunk assures them that this is only a theory. However, Vegapunk then asks Robin a question. If Ohara was erased because of this theory, that would mean that the government had acknowledged that the theory is the truth, right? Robin, seemingly frustrated, asks Vegapunk, who do you think you are? Now, from this interpretation, it looks like Robin is more so questioning Vegapunk for asking all of these questions, especially since she knows that he works for the Marines. But I think from this chapter, we can almost confirm that Vegapunk is more so of an ally than a villain. So there's that. Robin continues saying, talking about us like that. And I believe us is more so referring to the researchers back in Ohara. The researchers in Ohara made a theory from researching various important documents. Do you think the government will hear it from a powerful person like you? But Vegapunk then lets it know to Robin that he is actually in the same situation as them. And if he were to ever discuss the ancient kingdom, he will be obliterated as well. Usopp then doesn't want to hear anymore and asks to be released, but Vegapunk continues. Usopp out of nowhere doesn't want to hear anymore and he asks to be released, but Robin still has a couple of questions. Robin says, how do you know about that kingdom? Every book that Ohara gathered has been... Vegapunk cuts her off and says this, the will of Ohara still lives. And this is when shit really starts to pop off. Check this out. That day the world was in an uproar. Scholarland or Ohara got destroyed in one night with one lone survivor. The world government labeled them as an evil scholar group that were plotting to take over the world. Vegapunk then explains that months after the Buster Call was called on Ohara, he went back to go ahead and pay his respects to his old acquaintance, Professor Clover. Vegapunk even knew Clover even when he used to be an adventurer who wanted to explore the world trying to find any and every single book in the world. He had even been captured and imprisoned 10 times by the Navy, but despite that became the most famous archaeologist in the world. Professor Clover would soon bring every single scholar that he knew of and brought them to Ohara, making it a sanctuary for archaeologists. And Vegapunk was devastated to see Clover's work reduced to ashes. He was also surprised that they burned down the Tree of Knowledge. Yet there was a lake hidden in the central area within Ohara, and to his surprise, books were drowning in there. And it was realized since the island was set on fire, the people of Ohara wanted to preserve any single findings that they possibly could. They were on a mission to continue the will of Ohara. Clueless soldiers from the Marines and the world governments actually saw this happen, yet they didn't really value the significance of what was going on. But in essence, it was actually a victory for Ohara. Vegapunk was so overwhelmed by this moment that even he shed a couple tears for the people. Then we continue and we see Robin have a flashback of that very dreadful day in Ohara, and it's realized that her mom was helping in the aid of preserving this very knowledge. And the biggest panel that sticks out from this flashback is her mom saying this, we shouldn't give up on the future that you'll be living in. And this is when Jaguar takes Robin away from her mother. And this moment makes Robin cry, and in essence, it kind of, is really sad, man. It's just kind of seeing all of this. Even I shed a couple tears for my girl Robin. She did, We all stand Robin. We all stand Robin. Nami and Sanji are actually upset that Robin is being forced to cry from kind of reliving the moments within Ohara, but they'll soon notice that this is actually a good cry later on. Robin then confirms that Ohara did try to expose that kingdom, just like Vegapunk had detailed. Robin then asks whatever happened to the books that were thrown in the lakes. Vegapunk explains that his plans were to bring them to Punk Hazard, but his pleas to the higher-ups fell to deaf ears. Soon, Vegapunk remembers the very day that he met those guys. And even more specifically, that guy. Him. My boy, Dragon. We cut to a flashback of exactly what happened 22 years ago. And we see Vegapunk's face for the first time. But they strategically leave out his head. There's a reason for that. And he's remembering the time where he actually went to Ohara, and he remembers giants actually retrieving those very books in order to preserve them. And he questions, do they even know the significance of those very books? And then from the shadows, we hear a voice call out to Vegapunk, and he simply says, it's been a while. And he also says that Vegapunk is pretty recognizable by the way his hair is. And I think that's true for anybody who sees Vegapunk. But before I continue, let's address the elephant in the room. Oda is definitely a troll for making Vegapunk's head look like this, my guy. Like, look at this man's head. Like, I do understand he wanted to give him like a Jimmy Neutron-esque head, but he looks like Sheen, like evil Sheen. Y'all remember that episode? Like, this is OD, and I know that Oda is a troll, but I did find this incredibly funny. But like I said, I actually do appreciate Vegapunk's design. It's more so reminiscent, obviously, of Albert Einstein. But anyways, moving on, the mysterious figure that we actually see come from the shadows is none other than Monkey D. Dragon. And like I said before, this chapter alone should give you enough reason to put stocks into Dragon. Vegapunk and Dragon both ask each other why are they here. So Vegapunk and Dragon seem to have already been acquaintances in the past. They both ask each other why they are here, and they are both here because they were both acquaintances of Professor Clover. Dragon is pretty upset that Clover was labeled as a man wanting to destroy the world, and says that this is none other than information manipulation. Dragon says the words that Clover said to him were, I won't let the assets that Ohara left become erased from history. Dragon then asks Vegapunk, is he concerned about the giants? And he basically lets them know that those giants are from Elbaf, and they know exactly the value of those books. Their captain is a strange man with bandages covering his body. Now this is pretty telling, especially since we soon find out that this bandaged individual is none other than Jaguar de Sal. Now really quick, I want to go ahead and address this. We actually learned in a couple chapters before that there was a man marked by fire. And I think we can really kind of confirm that Jaguar is the man marked by fire. And this is actually huge because this means that we're probably going to see Kid and Elbaf when we do move on to that arc. As well as, I think the realization of when the man marked by fire was actually presented to us within that chapter, the fact that Robin seemed kind of oblivious by that fact, but Law seemed more so like he knew exactly who it was and who he was connected to. It just adds so much depth to whether or not Law may have already seen who Jaguar is, and maybe already have been to Elbaf. And then I also want to know, how does Killer and Kid already know about Jaguar? So this is going to be huge going forward for One Piece. And also, not only that, I want to know what Aokiji's true motives are, because it seems like when he actually froze Jaguar during the Ohara incident, it seemed like he was intentionally time capsuling him, especially since his attack is called Time Capsule Ice, or some Ice Time Capsule or whatever. I find that very interesting as well, because maybe Aokiji does have some resonance with the revolutionaries, but I don't know, we'll see. Maybe Aokiji was sent by Dragon in order to spy on the Blackbeard pirates and see what they're up to. Who knows, but there's a lot of stuff going for it as well. And we move back to Dragon, who lets it be known that the world government didn't necessarily value the knowledge that Ohara had, and he's very glad that it wasn't all destroyed. Vegapunk is seemingly under the impression that Vegapunk may be under the tutelage of the world government. And Vegapunk tries to explain his case, but Dragon continues. calling Vegapunk a government lapdog even after Dragon has already invited Vegapunk multiple times to the Liberation Group. Yet Vegapunk has declined. Yet it's kind of described that Vegapunk's reasoning for declining was because the Liberation had absolutely no money to fund any of the projects that Vegapunk was trying to do. So it kind of makes sense. Vegapunk states this: the world government is a massive organization, especially the Navy. There's a lot of people who can understand me. Don't lose your objective, Dragon. Dragon replies and he says, I know, but this incident pisses me off. Dragon is about that action, boys. Dragon is about that action. Then Dragon makes this very powerful speech and he says this: in the name of justice, they beat up those powerless researchers with violence just because they had an unreasonable opinion, quote unquote. I will make an army that can fight it. Vegapunk then confusedly asks Dragon, you who despises violence? Meaning, in essence, Dragon has firsthand seen the horrors of war and what it can do to people, and it leaves a lasting impression. Dragon simply responds and says this: just see it, Vegapunk. I will change the world. I won't let Clover's death and the will of Ohara go in vain. We then come back to the present to Vegapunk number 1, Shaka, and he lets it be known that that very same year that he had the conversation with Dragon, that Dragon actually established, finally, the Revolutionary Army, along with Ivankov as well as Kuma. And this shocked the world. And my only question is, I want to know whether or not Dragon was a huge figure before he actually decided to go ahead and establish the revolutionaries. Now, it could be one of two things. It would be shocking, especially to see a huge figure simply switch sides and become adversaries of the world government. Or it could have been one of those things where Dragon was always in the fray or in the shadows, and then at some point, one way or another, he decided to go ahead and proclaim his battle or his war against the world government. But I do want to see more about Dragon's backstory. This was all we got, but this was very interesting. And anyways, Dragon in this chapter alone just gave so many levels to this chapter, especially for the fact that this was the catalyst that sent Dragon on his quest to stop the oppression of the world government. But man, I'm so excited for Dragon fans. This is the time to be hype. Now, at this point, we're back to the present, and the Straw Hats all have some kind of comments to say about this realization about Dragon and Vegapunk. Nami praises Luffy's dad. Usopp excitingly says they went to Elbaf, which is probably going to be foreshadowing for later to come once we actually do step into Elbaf. Robin is interested because she didn't even know that Dragon and Clover actually knew each other. Frankie questions why Kuma actually saved them and why did Vegapunk remodel him. And Sanji was interested in the fact that Ivankov was a part of the revolutionaries. And quick side note, I feel like Sanji, Luffy, and Robin are all connections within the Straw Hats to some of the revolutionaries. So I think that's going to be very interesting going forward. Then Shaka lets you know what happened to those books. And he was able to secretly go to Elbaf and read all of the information from the books that had been preserved. And basically all of the research is in his head. And we get this super crazy dope panel of Shaka basically just pointing to his head. This shit is really fire, man. This shit is crazy. Then Robin, happily crying, asks, was the man in bandages, was the captain of these giants named Jaguar? And Vegapunk says nothing, but seemingly confirms that that is him. And then Vegapunk says he has something new to show them. And the prospect of what Vegapunk wants to show this group of Straw Hats is very telling. I wonder what he has to show them. Maybe it's related to the Ancient Kingdom, or maybe it's something else. Maybe it could be related to something that Frankie's very interested in, or it could be something about Vegapunk having his relationship with Judge, with Sanji, or it could be something related to Robin. So I'm very interested to see what happens next. But we finally end the chapter with Luffy's group, and they have basically stumbled upon that robot that we saw in the last chapter. And from the looks of it, it seems like they are trying to see if it works. But Luffy lets him know that there's no seat, so I guess it can't necessarily be operated, but it may just be automatic, and that's what Chopper suggests. But out of nowhere, it seems like the robot starts to explode, according to Luffy. And from the side, we see half a man, and I'm pretty sure you already know who it is. And Luffy tries to pull him out. Once Luffy actually does pull him out, the man recognizes Luffy as Dragon's son, and even recognizes Bonnie, who he hasn't seen since she was a child. Bonnie, in disgust, proclaims what we already know, that this is Dr. Vegapunk. And we end the chapter with the group seemingly flying through the sky and Vegapunk in full display. And it seems like he's kind of reduced his head down to a very, feasible size. I believe that maybe he gave some of his brain to all of the other 6 Vegapunks, who knows, but I do find this very interesting, and I do appreciate his design. He looks exactly like Albert Einstein, so I think that's very that's something that, you know, definitely kind of aligns with how Oda likes to make his characters. And I'm not 100% sure if there was a break next week, and I know this was a long chapter review. If you stayed this long, I really appreciate you. But there was a lot to cover with Dragon and the secrets of Ohara. I feel like this was one of the best kind of information dump kind of chapters that we've gotten in a very, very long time. Now, like I said before, one thing that I really want to know is what was Dragon's previous position before he actually started the Revolutionaries. It seems from the looks of it that he may have been involved in some type of army even before he started the Revolutionary Army. And I know this may seem like a bit of a stretch, but we know that the Navy and the Marines is more so the military force that basically operates within the seas. But in One Piece, we haven't necessarily seen too much of a military force that operates on land. So I wonder if Dragon was a part of some kind of special forces unit that we don't know of just yet, but that could be the case, especially from the garment that Dragon had when he went to go see his old acquaintance, or basically go pay his old respects to his old acquaintance, Clover. But another thing that I would like to point out, the giant straw hat that we actually see in Marizwa, I want to know if Im-sama kept that as a memento from the war from the D-clan members of the ancient kingdoms versus the 20 families. And like I said, I know that things are going to start to unpack very soon, but I definitely think that Joy Boy may have truly been a giant from the looks of it, especially seeing that Jaguar D Sal is actually basically the giant captain as of right now. So I want to kind of see how this kind of transpires. I think from what we can kind of go off, we know that Elbaf might be next, and we're probably going to see King. Hopefully we're going to see Law, who knows. But other than that, I'm very excited to see what happens next. This chapter was one of the best chapters that we had at One Piece, and we are truly in the end game. But let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the chapter. Please let me know any comments, any theories that you might have. I would love to discuss with you in the comments down below. Go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. My name is Benji. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.